Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really critical moment in history, the 1969 mass upsurge in what was then East Pakistan. It's this incredible story of how a list of political demands could just completely spiral into a revolution, one that would actually end up toppling a military dictator. So that's the big question, right? How does that happen? We're going to follow this explosive chain of events, starting with just a single political proposal, and see how it ended with a nation on the very brink of massive change. So, let's get into it. So, where does this all start? Well, not with riots in the streets, but actually with a document, a political program that the central government saw as really a threat to the nation itself. And you know what? This idea caught fire. Proposed back in 1966, the six-point program basically called for more self-rule for East Pakistan, and it got huge public support, seemingly overnight. It really tapped into this long simmering feeling of being left out, both economically and politically. But the central government, which was led by President Ayub Khan, well, they didn't see it as a proposal. They saw it as a threat. And look, he didn't just disagree with the 6 points. In his mind, this was a direct path to the breakup of Pakistan. He flat out said the government was ready for a civil war to stop it. And these weren't just words. The government's response was swift, and it was brutal. They jailed the movement's leader, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. When people hit the streets to protest, police opened fire. They shut down the main pro-autonomy newspaper and arrested its editor. And for a little while, it kind of seemed like the movement had been crushed. Fast forward 2 years. And this is where the government makes a classic mistake. They overplay their hand. And ironically, their attempt to kill the movement for good is exactly what brings it roaring back to life, bigger and stronger than ever before. So let's talk about a number. 35. That's how many people, including Sheikh Mujib, who is already in jail, were officially charged with treason by the government in January of 1968. And the accusation was just huge. Conspiring with a foreign enemy, India, to literally break East Pakistan away from the country. This case was meant to be the final nail in the coffin for the whole autonomy movement. But instead, it lit a match across all of East Pakistan. So what happens when you push people that hard? They push back. And soon, this one defiant slogan started to pop up everywhere. It became a rallying cry in the streets as students, ignoring government bans, started leading these massive protests. The government's plan had backfired, big time. And this is where the students really step onto the main stage. They didn't just protest the conspiracy case. No, they saw an opportunity and they grabbed it with both hands. They got organized, they united, and they expanded the movement's goals way beyond those original 6 points. First thing they did, rival student groups, who were usually at odds with each other, actually put their differences aside and formed this Students' Committee of Action. And they didn't just adopt the old demands. They came up with a new, way more ambitious platform, the 11-point movement. So naturally, they started with stuff that directly affected them, the education system. They called for some huge reforms, like cutting tuition and housing fees in half, making Bengali the official language for teaching, and demanding full autonomy for the universities. But this is the part that's a real game changer. This is where the movement explodes beyond just student issues. They start demanding things like universal voting rights, nationalizing big industries, lowering taxes for peasants, and making sure workers got fair wages. By doing this, by including the problems of basically every part of society, the students turned a political fight into a true people's revolution. So by the time 1969 rolls around, this thing has just snowballed. What started with a political document and was reignited by a court case was now an unstoppable, full-blown mass uprising. The government tried to clamp down, with force, but it was just too late. The whole situation was spinning out of their control. Protesters were actually taking over key parts of the capital city, Dhaka. But this didn't come without a cost. Some of the top student leaders, a university teacher, and even one of the men accused in the conspiracy case were all killed during the unrest. And then the whole regime just collapses. And it happens so fast it's almost hard to believe. In just 3 days, everything changes. On February 21st, Ayub Khan finally caves and announces he won't run for re-election. The very next day, the government drops the whole conspiracy case and frees all the prisoners. And then on the 23rd, Sheikh Mujib is welcomed as a hero at this huge rally where he's given the title Banga Bungu, which means friend of Bengal. It was a complete and total surrender by the government. So they did it. They toppled a dictator who'd been in power for more than a decade. But, and there's a big but here, this celebration didn't last long because power didn't shift to the people. It just shifted to another general. About a month goes by, and on March 24th, Ayub Khan is officially out. But instead of power going to a civilian government, he hands it off to his army chief, General Yahya Khan. And what's the first thing Yahya Khan does? He declares a whole new round of martial law across the country. And Yahya Khan did not mess around. His first moves were absolutely ruthless. He put out these new rules promising long prison sentences if you criticized him, or if you went on strike, and even the death penalty if you damaged public property. It really seemed like one dictator had just been swapped out for another. But then, in his first big speech to the nation, he sounds completely different. He tells everyone, hey, this is just temporary. I'm just here to clean things up. He promised to do what Ayub Khan never would, hold the country's first ever free and fair elections, and then peacefully hand over power. And believe it or not, it worked. The protests stopped, the students went back to their classes, and things across the country calmed down. And just like that, the 1969 mass upsurge was over. It had done the impossible. It had forced a military regime to its knees. But its end, which came because of promises from another general, was really just setting the stage for an even bigger, much more brutal conflict that was waiting right around the corner. I mean, what happens when the entire fate of your nation rests on the word of a dictator?